Hello, Year 5. Right, the arithmetic today is saved separately. So it's just 6 quick questions based on different areas of arithmetic. Don't forget, you only need to spend a maximum of 10 minutes on that. Try and show your workings. Although it is arithmetic, you will need to show your workings for some of it, but it might be that it's just jottings rather than a full written method, okay? So today we are moving on to lesson 6 of our comparing decimals. Can you spot my mistake first of all with this? So I'm going to let you have a think about that when you pause the video. Okay, so comparing decimals, carrying on our journey in decimal work today. Lesson 6. So here's our in focus. We've got 3 bags on some scales here, and they each show a different mass, not a different weight. Remember, it's a mass, because as we know from our science, weight refers to the force of gravity rather than the mass of something, so how heavy something is. So we've got a mass of 2.5 kilograms, 2.125 kilograms, and 2.15 kilograms. Hannah says that 2.125 kilograms must be the heaviest. 2.125 has the most digits. Now, we know from our learning that she is wrong, so I want you to explain why she's wrong. There's a quick video today because I think quite a lot of this is recapping. So pause the video, have a go, we'll quickly go through it, and then I'll show you what today's learning is. Right, well done, guys. So let's quickly go through that then. Oh gosh, I've forgotten this lady's name. Oh, I will find these names out one day, probably by the time you leave. She focuses on the first decimal place. So we've got here, the rest of it's been covered here. I don't know if you can see that very well on the screen, but some of it's been covered. So the first decimal place is this column here. So we've got 2.1, 2.1, and 2.5. And she says, this method doesn't tell me which of the first 2 masses is heavier. And she's right, isn't she? So 2.1, 2.1, this bit's covered. That doesn't help us. We don't know which one is the heavier of the 2 masses. So what can she do? Hopefully, you know that she's going to need to look at the next column along, because we know that as we move further through the columns to the right, that's how we find out. So the furthest column to the left is the one that tells us which is the heaviest, because the greater the value of the column towards the left, the greater it is, and we have to move to our right, move across our columns to our right to find out if, for instance, like these 2, they're the same, we go to the next column to the right to find out which is heaviest. Okay, all right, so can we easily work out the second largest? Yes, we can, can't we? We can have a look at that next column along. So I've said, show me the numbers 2.125 and 2.15 using Dean's. So in your books, in your squared books, you could draw, and you don't have to actually do it in detail. You could just do a bigger square for the ones. Well, that would be a 3D square for the ones. So if you can have a go at doing that. So the ones would be a 3D square. The 10ths column, that's going to be your normal square, your 2D square. The hundredths column, that's going to be your, what we would normally call a 10 block, the long thin ones, and then your thousandths is your small individual blocks. So see if you can show me those 2 numbers using your Dean's. Okay, pause the video to have a go at that. Right, okay, so here they are with our Dean's. So we've got the number 2.5, we've got 2 as the 3D blocks and 5 of the big squares. So 2.5, these are the whole numbers, and these, any of these and these are our decimal numbers. So we've got 2.5. Here it shows 2 whole, 0.1, and then 2 of the hundredths, which is the tens block, and then 5, this is our thousandths. And then we've got 2.1, and then we've got 5 of the hundredths blocks. Okay, so we've ordered them here. Look, 2.125 is the lightest, 2.15 is the next heaviest, and then the heaviest of all of them is 2.5. All right, so we know that 2.125 kilograms is actually the lightest of the 3 masses. I'm whizzing through this a bit because I know that we've done quite a lot of this. But it's really good for you to just keep practicing, overlearning things. That's doing things again and again. It gets it into our brains and we start to understand it better. Hopefully by now you're starting to be much more confident with looking at these deans and knowing what each of them means, breaking numbers apart and knowing what each of those means. Okay, so next one, I want you in your books to show me how would each of these numbers be written as mixed numbers, so as fractions. Okay, that's a bit trickier, that, but we're starting to really think about that comparison between fractions and decimals. So pause the video and have a go at writing each of these as mixed numbers now. Okay, so let's have a look at those. Right, so I haven't done 2.5, but 2.5 would be 2 and then 5/10 because it's in the tenths column. So I've done these two here. So we've got 2 whole, that's a whole number, 2 and 125 thousandths. Because remember what I said before, the number that's the furthest to the right, so the digits, the last digit, we look at which column that's in, and that's what it's out of. So this is in the thousandths column, so we say it's thousandths. Okay, here we've got 2 whole and 15 hundredths, because the 5 is in the hundredths. Okay, so we know that it's 15 hundredths. So we've got a 10, 1 in the tenths column as well as the 5 in the hundredths. All right, so that makes it 15 hundredths. So can we compare these two numbers? I wonder what you think. Can you compare them? Look, are they comparable? They're not, are they? We can't compare numbers that have different denominators. So what do you think we need to do? Really hoping that you're saying to me, we need to make them the same denominator. We need to make them a common denominator. So we can't divide this by 100. We don't divide, remember, to make them a common denominator. We always multiply. So here I need to make this 10 times bigger. This number 100 needs to be 10 times bigger. So I need to multiply it by 10 to make it 1000, which means that I have to do the same to my numerator. I'm going to multiply it by 10. 15 times 10 is 150. Now they're comparable. This number is exactly the same value as 15 hundredths. Okay, 15 over 100. It's the same value, it's just that we can now compare it. And I can see that the 2 is the same in both numbers, so I don't need to think about that at all. In this number, 125 over 1,000, that's smaller than 150 over 1,000. So this is the smaller number, okay? So that's when sometimes you might look at converting it to a fraction and seeing whether that helps you to understand it a bit more. So that's what we mean by doing that, okay? Right, so let's go back and have a look then at our answer, because remember, it's always really important when we come back. Some of you are really, really trying hard with your answers for your in focus, and we really try to practice that in school, don't we, to make sure that we really get our language right. We're thinking about all the language that we've learned. We're thinking about trying to use a calculation or trying to use numbers to explain it. So all of that needs to come into your answer. And I know that some of them recently have been a bit trickier, but let's have a little look. This is how I explained it. You might be able to explain it even better than me, because sometimes I'm not so good with the words. So let's have a look. Hannah is wrong because all the masses have 2 whole kilograms. So we can't look at that bit. So we need to look at the next digit in the tenths column. The larger the digit in this column, the larger the number. So I've said that 2.5 kilograms has a 5 in the tenths column, and the other 2 only have a 1. Right, can you see that? Which means that this is the largest, right? This is the heaviest, not the largest. This is the heaviest. And then we look at the hundreds column to find out which is the next heaviest. So it's between these two now. So we look at the hundreds column, and we can see that actually the next heaviest is 2.15 because it's got a 5 in the hundreds column, and 2.125 only has a 2. All right, so 2.15 is the next heaviest. Right, okay. Right, so I'm sure that you understand that by now. You've done really, really well. So I've got something in my eye. You've done really, really well with this. So today you haven't got a particularly long guided practice. It's just like yesterday's, or not yesterday's. It was Friday, wasn't it? So let's have a quick look at your guided practice. So again, you just have to arrange these numbers. Some of you will do these in the blink of an eye. Some of you it might take a little bit longer, but don't panic. So remember working across the number from left to right. That's how you're going to work out which is the largest number. So you've just got those two to have a go at. Then you've got your workbook, 2 pages today on your workbook, pages 11 and 12. So again, you're comparing the numbers and you're starting off by saying which is less than. So you need to put the smallest in the first box, and then be careful because it changes, and this time it's greater than. Then you've got to arrange the numbers. All right, so we're carrying on lots and lots of practice with that. So I would anticipate lots of you will move on to your extension today. And we've gone for some reasoning extensions today. It's always really, really important once you understand something to really talk around it, really explore it. And that's what we're trying to do with our reasoning extension tasks. So obviously I have put these as documents that you can print off, but you don't need to, remember. You can leave it up on your screen, or if you want to open it up as a document, leave it on the screen, you can. You really don't need to print them off. You can just write the answers in your books like lots of you have been doing. And if you can just make sure you write extension, all right, and it's really helpful if you're doing the Maths Teasers extension, if you put MT extension. So normal extension, you just write extension, and then if you do move on to the Maths Teasers one, you just put MT extension. That really helps us when we're looking at your work, because sometimes there's lots and lots of numbers, and especially if people are putting things from different days, it can be a bit tricky for us to work out what it is. So help us out, guys. We know you're really good at that. So make sure that you label your work properly so that we can work it out. Okay, so the first one here, Amir says to convert a fraction to a decimal, take the numerator and put it after the decimal point. So here we've got the numerator is 21. Remember, the numerator is the top number on the fraction, and you just simply put it after the 21. So it says, write 2 examples of converting fractions to decimals to prove this does not always work. So we're telling you that doesn't work, but you've got to prove it to us. You've got to find ways to prove that it isn't right. Okay, and then your second one, which I think some of you will move on to, use the digits 3, 4, and 5 to complete the decimal number. So you've been given part of it here already, so you've got these boxes to fill. And it says list all the possible numbers you can make. All right, so there's quite a few. Well, there's more than just one. So once you've listed those, can you write the decimals as mixed numbers? So that means as fractions, just like we did in the Maths No Problem. And then choose 3 of the numbers and write them out in words. So for instance, if I were going to put a 3 in here, I would write it as 3 tens, 0 ones, 4 tenths, and 5 hundredths, for instance. Okay, so that's that one. And then the Maths Teasers extension, this one is very open. There are lots and lots of different options you can have. Once you get into that like higher level thinking, that often happens. So I know it's frustrating sometimes when you haven't got a right or a wrong answer. I have put some examples of some answers on the sheet that we've included with the answers, but there are lots, and we can have a look at those for you. But there are some clues here for a mystery number, and it says use the clues to find 4 decimal numbers with 2 decimal places that it could be. So remember, it's not just 4, there are more than 4. We just want 4 of them. Now find 4 decimal numbers with up to 2 decimal places that the mystery number could not be, and explain why. So why couldn't it be? Thinking about those clues, and then you're going to have a go at writing one of your own. Okay, so that's your maths for today. Any problems, get straight on Tapestry and we will be back as soon as we can to help you. All right, I hope it goes really well today.